Semirama built a 887-meter-long stone bridge in Vardun. The remains of the pillars of the bridge were found in a river and are 21 by 9 meters wide and 9 meters wide between them. In the middle of the city, Semirama built a large ziggurat with 8 floors, the temple of god Belo. At the top of the temple there were 3 golden statues of Belo, Rheasa, and the goddess whom the Greeks call Hera. This goddess is pre-Greek goddess and her name is unknown. Her real name is unknown. The ziggurat also served as an observatory. It was the Tower of Babel from the Old Testament, a true world marvel of construction technique. Semirama is said to have conquered most of Libya, that is, Africa, to have visited Hamon's temple and prophecy, and have conquered Ethiopia. But she had no success in one attempt to conquer India. The penetration of so-called Hyksos into Egypt coincides with Nino's conquest of Egypt. Hyksos came from the direction of Asia Minor and remained in Egypt for several centuries, which is confirmed by records and archaeology. The author of the book about Hyksos, Zachary Mayani, says, "Indeed, somewhere between 2300 and 2065 years before Christ, during the first intermedial period, Egypt suffered an invasion." The Mayani time is a little too high, in 30 to 50 years, but it is indisputable that the invasion happened in Nino's time. Elsewhere, Mayani says that around 2000 BC, an Aryan wave set out from Asia Minor to the east, 12th century. Herodotus writes about the rulers who ruled the city of Sard in Asia Minor, the capital of Lydia, and says, "The Heracles pretended to be the descendant of the sun god Archer, lion tamer, when a people called him Sandon, Serbon, the Assyrian Belo, and the Greeks Hercules." Then he says that Argon, son of Nino, this son of Belov, was the first Heraclich to rule in Sardis, just as Kandavlemirsov was the last of them. This is the proof that Nino, as well as his son Sarkin or Sargon, who Herodotus calls Argon, ruled Asia Minor. One part of the Serbian tribes in the Middle East who lived on the coast were also called Morites or Amorites. Some writers extended this name to Nino and his warriors. So Albright says, "Between 2000 and 1775 BC, all states fell under the Amorite domination. The Amorites were in Lower Egypt around 2000 before Christ. Mayani also uses the name Amorites and says, "Around 2000 BC, an Amorite dynasty settled in Babylon and removed the Elamite kings. The Egyptians completely equated their god Osiris with Bak. That is why Diodorus says, Osiris had risen in Niza, the city of Happy Arabia. Happy Arabia means South Arabia to the Red Sea, near Egypt, and that is why the Greeks call him Dionysus. The Egyptians had a legend about Osiris' campaign in India, the founding of the city of Niza and a planting of ivy. According to the same legend, Osiris ruled Egypt as a king and had a son named Macedon. According to this legend, it is said that Osiris was the ruler of all countries from India to the source of the Danube. Around 1030 BC, Apis was the first god in honor in Egypt, when some call him Serapis. This was the time of the Hyksos in Egypt. The Egyptians did not have their own legend about the flood. But Manetho, writing the history of Egypt in a time of luggage, describes one case related to the flood. God taught Hermes Trismegistus wrote the basics of science before the flood on one pillar in scripture and language. After the flood, another thought translated the contents of the inscription on the pillar into vernacular. It happened in a country of Seriadic. Lenormand and Maury consider Chaldea to be the land of Seriadic. Manetho's country Seriadic is without a doubt Assyria, in which Hasdea was only one small province. This is again about the mention of a Serbian name, whether it's related to Assyria or Hasdea. Manethon's god Thoth is Serbian Teut, and the Holy Scripture he speaks of is the letter that is called Hieratic in our time. It is in fact Srbica that was brought to Egypt by the conquerors during Nino's campaign. That letter was used in Egypt as another letter, in addition to the Egyptian official letter, the hieroglyphics, as contemporaries call it, which is perfect ideography. The Egyptian hieratic letter is shown at the end of this book. The Hyksos worshipped their god Suteha. It is about the Serbian god Seut, who Mayani says was the deity of fire, sun and horse. Mayani also says that the Jews followed the movement of the Hyksos. He claims that Jews are from Mesopotamia. Boshar is even more accurate in determining the place of their origin and says, Jews are originally from Selo or Sala near Susiana. Heber was born from Selo. The Hyksos are Syrians, Semites, but appear to have been led by Hittites and Yegei. We have already seen that Nino made alliances and took an auxiliary army from the countries he passed through. Serbian warriors took Jews and Greeks to Egypt, the former from Mesopotamia and a latter from Cappadocia. After the Serbian withdrawal from Egypt, Jews and Greeks remained there, who later emigrated. Mayani also tells us that the horses of the Hyksos in Egypt were the same as those of Sigyn, small in stature, strong neck, and strong. And such a breed of horse is found on Helm, Balkan Peninsula. In his time, Adam Scott mentions that Nemrod, the first emperor of the world, had a son, Cres, after whom the island of Crete got its name. Cres was the first king of Crete and had a son, Nebo, from whom Saturn was born, and from this Iovis. Although gods and people are mixed here, the connection between Nino and Europe can be seen. We have already seen that the Egyptians believed that Bak's kingdom, that is, Nino's, stretched from India to the source of the Danube. We have the following information about Diodorus. He says that Nino's brother Pico, Picus in Latin, who they also called Div, was the king of Italy and held the West for 120 years. Pico had a son, Faun, from who they also called Hermes. Before his death, Pico ordered that he should be buried in Crete. In the time of Diodorus, there was another monument in Crete with the inscription, "Here lies Pico, whom people called Div." In Cadrin, we also have information about Pico's rule in Italy and that Nino and his descendants had this country under their rule. These and other similar stories tell us that Nino's empire extended to a good part to Europe. Otherwise, we would not be talking about a world empire. It is less important whether Nino or his brother personally conquered Western Europe. We will see elsewhere that Western Europe experienced a Serbian invasion from the Danube around 2000 BC at the same time as Asia was conquered. Diodorus says that Bak and his army traveled all over the inhabited world. After returning from India, Bak sat on an elephant during the celebration of the triumph and that was the first triumph in history.